this. Then on March 16th, 1979, Hollywood releases the China Syndrome about a plant meltdown. And wouldn't you know it, 12 days later on March 28th, 3 Mile Island happened. And what exactly happened? Well, there were no injuries, no fatalities. They just say that there was some material release and there was a huge media circus over this and scared everybody away from this. And guys, this is a huge deal. We actually solved all the world's energy problems 80 years ago, but I'm just a dumb YouTuber. The first plant cost about $3 million to build. It supplied energy to 150,000 houses. That's $20, not a month, $20 period. And could probably be sustained at about $5 a year. But nope, it's just too dangerous. You know what it's not too dangerous for? Powering AI. See, now we got to come up with huge amounts of energy to power the AI with. And no problem, we'll just build some power plants right there on site. Yeah, so that's that aspect of things. Here you can see they're really worried about them being a mile away from detonation. You can look into Fukushima and Nagasaki and there's no detectable increase in birth defects, cancer, anything. In 1957, they did a publicity stunt where they had 5 soldiers stand directly below a blast at 18,500 feet to show the local townsfolk that it was safe. There have been over 2,000 open-air tests. Nobody was worried about the fallout. In America, most of these were in Nevada, where the prevailing westerlies blow it all across America. And there's nothing you're going to find on this side of things that leads to this. So where did this whole idea come from in the first place? There's 3 places that you're going to hear about serious ionizing radiation damage. Marie and Pierre Curie, who first discovered radium. Eben Byers, who drank 1,400 bottles of radium water. And then the Radium Girls, who used to paint glow-in-the-dark watch dials with a radium-based paint. So let's start with Marie Curie, who first discovered radium. So she found a sample of uranium that was way more radioactive than anything else that anybody had found. So much so that she concluded it must be a new element. Everybody thought she was crazy, and it took her and her husband like a couple years to smash enough rocks down to get a quantifiable enough amount of radium to even test. And sure enough, she was right. It was a brand new element. And this tiny little amount they were able to extract was 2.7 million times more radioactive than uranium. So this is night and day different than uranium. 2.7 million times more of this going on. It's important here to understand how potent this is. When I get to my closing arguments, you'll see why. This is where this all gets crazy. Immediately, the therapeutic properties of radium rays against cancer were recognized. The use of radium in medicine became so common that every kind of disease was treated by radium therapy. Not only breast cancer, but also diabetes, sciatica, uremia, rheumatism, and even impotence. As a consequence of this tremendous success, the radium industry grew rapidly during the 1920s, and numerous goods, especially cosmetics, doped with radium, were on sale. It was even considered that in order to be in good health, one should drink a glass of radioactive water every day, prepared by using a radium percolator. This period lasted for more than 25 years. Then just before World War II, radium use was considered dangerous and the number of its applications decreased. So this was used as a miracle cure-all for everything for 25 years. That's like as long as the internet's been around, which is way worse for public health than radium. You had beauty products that bragged about their radioactive properties. Radio cream has been religiously adhered to without a break by satisfied customers for 15 years. And then you had Radithor, that was water which promised to contain at least one isotope of radium. That is an insanely small amount of material that was supposed to help with anything from diabetes to back pain. One thing it did for sure was kill cancer cells. Now, it's kind of interesting that it's found at the end of a silver vein. That's got my living Earth's wheel spinning. But it's in this black ore they call pitch blende or bad luck rock, meaning the silver had ran out. So it's somehow related to the universe's silver making process. Little did the miners know that inside that black ore is some of the most expensive stuff on Earth. A ton of pitch blende contains only a few micrograms of the element. A microgram is 1/1,000,000th of a gram. But when placed on or near a tumor, radium would cause the mass to shrink, sometimes completely. Radium's use in cancer treatment was limited only by its extreme rarity. We now know that radiation works by damaging DNA in cells. Cancer cells are less able to repair this DNA damage than normal cells and die preferentially as a result. Before its mechanism of action was understood, those who handled radium did not know to take appropriate safety precautions and suffered serious consequences as a result. So now back to Marie Curie. She died in 1934 of aplastic anemia, a blood cell disease likely caused by chronic low-level radiation exposure. Now, what they're calling low-level here is more radiation than most people would be around in their entire lifetimes. In today's money, this stuff is worth about $10 million a gram. That's 120,000 times more expensive than gold. So this stuff is extremely rare, and she's one of the few people that has been around any substantial quantity of this stuff. In 1926, Memorial Sloan Kettering started using this to treat cancer with, and they had about 9 grams more than anyone else in the world. A penny weighs about 2.5 grams, so you're talking 4 pennies worth of material. This stuff is extremely rare and extremely potent. But they worked with this stuff at the Radium Hospital. They figured out that if you made little gold tubes, then you could focus it and not damage the healthy cells. And this was kind of a miracle cure for 25 whole years. And then there was the Radium Girls. If you take a little minuscule amount of radium and mix it with zinc sulfide, then the radium makes the zinc sulfide glow in the dark. So they used to paint watches and clocks with this. And I'm sure this is where we get the idea that this is a green glowing goo. The radium itself doesn't glow. It causes the zinc sulfide to glow. But that's where we get that whole idea from. These ladies would paint all of these dials by hand, and to keep a good tip on their brushes, they would lick them and then paint the dials. Well, after years and years of direct exposure, then the girls started having adverse effects. There was this girl that had a giant tumor, the only photograph I've actually found of any of the Radium Girls. And then there was a media circus over all of this, and this is what got everybody completely afraid of this stuff. And then there was the case of Eben Byers, who drank 1,400 bottles of radium water. He also got tumors in his jaw, and it had to be amputated. The way radiation poisoning harms you is your bone marrow stops producing more blood cells, and those stagnant cells mutate and become cancerous. All cancers are caused by cell mutation. It's not the radioactivity that's causing the mutation. It's the lack of oxygen. But once again, this is where we get the idea that radioactivity causes mutations. So that solves it then, right? This stuff is just too dangerous to be around, and good thing they outlawed it completely, right? Well, not so fast. Let's do a little reasoning here. Marie Curie worked with this stuff for 36 years, and she was exposed to quantities of this stuff that very few people would be able to afford. At $10 million a gram, this stuff isn't going to accidentally be left in a baggie somewhere. And then when it comes to the Radium Girls, there are no exact figures for the number of girls who actually suffered severe side effects. I could only find the one picture of the one girl with any actual tumors. And once again, they were exposed to quantities that nobody else would ever be around. And then there was Eben Byers, who drank 1,400 bottles of this stuff. But outside of them, there were millions of people using products containing this stuff. The rich socialites that could afford this even threw radium tea parties. And all kinds of people touted the positive benefits of radium. So now let me put all of this into perspective. A positive beneficial dose of radium was measured in microcuries. 1 gram of radium equals 1 million microcuries. On the left here is 1 gram of platinum. So imagine dividing that up into a million different pieces. We're talking a couple of molecules of this stuff equals 1 microcurie. So the people that were actually harmed by radium were exposed to millions of times the suggested dose of this. Oh, now let's look at this stuff. Would anybody argue right now that this should be illegal? Well, probably not. It definitely has some positive anti-inflammatory qualities to it, right? But what if you ate 1,000,000 of these? What if you ate the whole bottle of this? It's the same thing with Tylenol too. Every medicine in the world, if you take just 10 times the suggested amount, it's going to have very negative effects on you. And how many people has this stuff offed in the last 100 years since it was invented? Somewhere between 21 to 25 million people. How many people is radium harmed? A handful. Even vitamin C in high enough doses is going to harm you. Anything in a high enough dose is bad for you. So for 25 years, this was used as a miracle cure, treating all kinds of ailments. And then a handful of people were harmed by this. There was a big media circus demonizing it, and they made the public too afraid to even touch this stuff because a handful of people were exposed to millions of times the suggested amount of it. And who do you think led this media circus to demonize it? Well, I don't have hard evidence yet, but I'm looking strong in J.D. Rock's direction. Because this was around the time that the American Medical Association started standardizing allopathic medicine. And what is allopathic medicine? Well, for the most part, the use of petrochemicals to make the medicine. Who controls the petrochemicals? J.D. Rock. So he sunk hundreds of millions of dollars into this new line of thinking, also demonizing natural homeopathic cures, which then diminished in the U.S. Many schools practicing alternative forms of medicine were shut down, and some doctors even jailed. So this was the medicinal mafia that took over healthcare in America. So is everybody seeing the bigger picture here? Good. So let's do a quick review. Radium, where we get almost all of our cases of negative health effects from, is 2.7 million times more radioactive than uranium. So people can work around this stuff all day long for their entire lives and be just fine. And like Galen Windsor said, yes, it's dangerous if you get enough of this stuff in a small area and then fire a proton into it, setting off a chain reaction. But if you're outside of that initial blast zone like these guys are, then you're going to be perfectly fine. So basically everything you've ever heard about fallout and nuclear winter is BS. The world has done 2,000 open air tests with this stuff, and it never caused a nuclear winter before. Why would it if we do it one more time? But that's what they tell you every time the possibility of a nuclear war pops up. We'll make the world uninhabitable for 20,000 years, just like Chernobyl, which is now one of the most thriving natural ecosystems on Earth. Seriously, go watch some of the documentaries like Wolves of Chernobyl. They have the largest wolf pack on Earth in Chernobyl. There are literally 6-foot-long catfish swimming in little streams, not because they're mutated, but because they've been left alone long enough to go their natural route. So we could literally be having $5 a year electric bills. It's too dangerous to do that with, but if you need to power more AI, then it's fine. And then there's radium that undeniably kills cancer cells. 100%, it works. It'll harm healthy cells too, but the healthy cells will get over it where the cancer cells won't. They also say it works for everything from diabetes to sciatica. But trust me, Google isn't touting the positive health benefits of this stuff anywhere. But a handful of people were exposed to millions of times the recommended healthy amount of this stuff, so they've made it illegal and demonized it. But just like any other medicine, aspirin included, if you take 10 times more than you're supposed to, it's gonna hurt you. And I will just about bet you anything that rich people that can afford $10 million a gram of this stuff are still using this when it's necessary. And they know damn good and well how to and how not to use it. So that's the skinny on radium and radioactivity. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll catch you on the next one. Static out.